Julia and Mark had been waiting for this vacation for months. They had found a modern yet affordable Airbnb, a cozy little cabin in the mountains. After a long drive, they finally unlocked the door and stepped inside. The warm atmosphere and the faint scent of burning wood from the fireplace instantly made them feel at ease. Julia gazed out the large glass windows and sighed. "This place is perfect." Mark nodded, stretching his arms. "Yeah. No city noise, just pure silence." But what they didn't know was that something, or someone, was watching them. That first night seemed normal. The couple snacked on some groceries and watched a movie. But when Julia went to the bathroom, she noticed something odd. As she wiped a tiny smudge off the mirror, she caught a strange reflection, a faint glimmer, like a tiny blinking light from inside the glass. She shook her head, telling herself it was just a trick of the light. Still, a strange unease crept over her, and she didn't mention it to Mark. Later that night, she woke up with a heavy feeling in her chest, as if something was pressing down on her. And worse, that gut-wrenching sensation of being watched. The next morning, Mark was making coffee when he noticed something peculiar. A small smoke detector was mounted oddly low on the wall, right above the TV. He frowned. "Why would a smoke detector be placed here?" he murmured. Julia, still groggy, glanced at it and shrugged. "Maybe it's an old safety measure?" But Mark's instincts told him otherwise. He reached up, removed the device, and examined it. When he popped the back cover open, his stomach twisted. Inside was a tiny lens. It wasn't a smoke detector. It was a hidden camera. A cold wave of fear rushed through them. "If there's one camera, there could be more," Julia whispered, her voice trembling. They began frantically searching the cabin, tearing apart the place. And what they found made their blood run cold. A small digital clock on the nightstand, the air vent in the bathroom, even a decorative figurine on the kitchen shelf. They all contained hidden cameras. Mark grabbed his phone to call the police, but there was no signal. He tried connecting to the Wi-Fi, but the network was gone. "Julia, we need to get out of here," he said, his voice tight with urgency. Julia's breathing grew rapid. Her pulse pounded in her ears. What if the person watching us is outside right now?" she whispered. Mark's eyes darted to the window, scanning the vast, empty landscape. And that emptiness, the sheer suffocating silence, felt far more terrifying than anything else. As they packed their things, Julia opened the Airbnb app, intending to message the host. But when she looked at the listing, she froze. There were no reviews, not a single comment from past guests. "How is that possible?" she stammered. Mark leaned over to look. Then Julia clicked on the host's profile. The username sent chills down her spine. Guest watcher. Just then, a sound from outside made them both stop breathing. Slow, deliberate footsteps on the gravel path. Mark cautiously pulled the curtain aside and felt his stomach drop. A hooded figure stood a few meters from the front door, hands buried in their pockets, completely still. "Julia, don't make a sound," he whispered. But Julia's trembling breath was already betraying her. The realization hit them like a brick. No phone signal, no internet. Someone outside, and no way to know how long they had been watched. Mark grabbed a kitchen knife, his grip tightening. "We're leaving through the back door," he muttered. They crept toward the kitchen, but when Mark twisted the doorknob, it wouldn't budge. The door was locked, from the outside. "Shit," he cursed. Julia's eyes filled with terror. Their only way out was the window. A loud knock shattered the silence. The sound of knuckles rapping against the wooden door, forceful and insistent. Julia clamped a hand over her mouth to stifle a scream. Mark grabbed a chair, ready to smash the window. But then, both their phones buzzed at the same time, a notification. With shaking hands, Julia looked at the screen. Julia screamed, and Mark didn't hesitate. He swung the chair at the window, shattering the glass. They scrambled out, sprinting toward their car. As Mark turned the ignition, his eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. The hooded figure still stood at the doorway. But this time, they weren't alone. More figures emerged from the darkness, their faces obscured, their bodies motionless. Mark slammed the gas pedal, tires screeching as they sped away. When Emma and Jake arrived at their secluded Airbnb for a long-awaited weekend getaway, everything seemed eerily quiet. The house matched the photos online, rustic, with wooden walls and large windows overlooking the forest. They had only communicated with the host, Daniel, through messages. The key was right where he said it would be, under the flower pot on the porch. At first, everything appeared normal. As they unpacked and explored, small details started to feel off. A used toothbrush was in the bathroom. In a drawer, Emma found an old driver's license with a woman's name on it. Probably left behind by a previous guest, Jake shrugged when he saw Emma's concerned expression. But the uneasiness in her chest wouldn't fade. As night fell, they tried to relax by the fireplace. The absence of any neighbors was both peaceful and unsettling. Jake opened a bottle of wine while Emma went to the kitchen, only to find an old phone sitting on the table. Its screen was cracked and the battery was dead, but the real question was, why was it there? When she showed Jake, he dismissed it. Maybe the cleaning staff forgot it. Around midnight, Emma was convinced something was wrong. Their bedroom door wouldn't close properly, almost as if someone was holding it from the other side. Jake thought she was overreacting, but then he checked the Airbnb app. Strangely, the listing still showed the house as available. "That doesn't make sense," Jake muttered. "Can someone still book this place for tonight?" At that moment, they heard something downstairs, heavy footsteps. They both froze. Jake crept toward the door, while Emma frantically checked her phone. No signal. When they peeked into the hallway, a shadowy figure stood in the dim light of the living room. "This is my house," a shaky voice said. The man standing there looked disheveled, his clothes dirty and torn. Emma's stomach dropped. She recognized him from the Airbnb profile picture. "Daniel," she whispered. But he looked nothing like the well-groomed host from the photos. Jake took a cautious step back. "We rented this place," he said, trying to sound firm, but the man just smirked. "That's what I thought too," he murmured, "but it's already occupied." Then from the top of the stairs another figure appeared, a woman, then another. Emma's breath hitched. "We need to get out," she whispered. Jake grabbed Emma's wrist and pulled her toward the front door, but when he turned the handle, it wouldn't budge. "Did you take the key?" Emma asked, her voice trembling. Jake's eyes widened. The key was still on the table inside. The stranger's footsteps grew louder. They rushed toward the window. Jake pushed it with all his strength, but it wouldn't open. The man's ragged breathing was right behind them. Desperate, Jake smashed the glass with his elbow and helped Emma climb out. He followed right after, landing on the cold ground. They didn't look back as they sprinted into the dark forest. Hours later, they made it to town and called the police. When authorities checked the Airbnb listing, there was no record of a host named Daniel. Even worse, the house itself had been abandoned for years. It once belonged to a couple who had mysteriously disappeared. Inside, the police found a driver's license matching the name Emma had seen earlier. That night, they never found out who or what had been in that house with them. Emily and James had been looking forward to their vacation for months. They had booked a cozy Airbnb cabin in a remote mountain town, far from the stress of city life. The place looked charming in the pictures: rustic wooden furniture, a stone fireplace, and large windows that let in natural light. They had never met the host in person, only communicated through messages to receive the door code. When they arrived, everything seemed normal, but as Emily checked the kitchen, she noticed something odd. There were a few leftover food items in the fridge. Probably from the last guests, she thought, and shrugged it off. Their first night was peaceful, but Emily woke up in the middle of the night with an uneasy feeling. It was as if someone was watching them. She dismissed it as paranoia and went back to sleep. The next morning, as they were having breakfast, James frowned. "Did you move this water bottle? I swear it was on the other shelf." Emily felt a slight chill but brushed it off with a laugh. They spent the day exploring the town, but when they returned that evening, Emily noticed something else. The kitchen drawer was slightly open. "Maybe we left it like that," she muttered, trying to reassure herself. The second night was even more unsettling. As Emily lay in bed, she heard a faint whisper-like sound coming from the bathroom. She held her breath, straining to listen, but the sound stopped. She told herself it was just the old plumbing. But then, from the corner of her eye, she noticed a slight movement near the smoke detector. Her heart pounded as she turned her head toward it. A tiny hole just beneath the detector seemed wrong. Was someone looking through it? The next morning, she told James what she had seen. He laughed at first, but grew serious when he saw how shaken she was. They decided to inspect the house more carefully. At first, nothing seemed out of place, until they moved the bedroom wardrobe. Behind it, they discovered a small, hidden sliding panel. When James opened it, a damp, musty smell filled the room. Inside was a tiny, cramped hiding space filled with old clothes, food wrappers, and something that made Emily's blood run cold: a notebook. Flipping through the pages, they saw dozens of scribbled notes, some dated, others with unsettling phrases like, "They don't notice me, but they can feel me." James muttered, "Is this some kind of sick joke?" Emily's breathing was shallow. The idea that someone might still be living in the house with them sent a wave of nausea through her. "We need to leave, now." James reached for his phone to contact the host, but their internet connection was down. As they rushed to leave, they opened the door and froze. Lying on the porch was an old bedsheet, covered in muddy handprints. Emily let out a strangled scream. James quickly slammed the door shut and tried calling again. No signal. Panic set in as they checked the windows, but outside was nothing but darkness. Hours passed as they sat in tense silence, listening for any sound. James grabbed a kitchen knife for protection. Emily sat on the edge of the bed, barely breathing. Then, from above them, they heard it. A faint creak coming from the attic. "Someone's up there," Emily whispered, eyes wide with terror. James slowly walked toward the attic hatch, but as he reached up, he noticed something chilling. Prints in the dust, leading in and out of the opening. They couldn't stay another second. Emily, driven by sheer adrenaline, flung the front door open and sprinted outside, James right behind her. They ran to their car, but when James turned the key, the engine refused to start. That's when they saw it. One of the cabin's dark windows was slightly open, and behind the glass, a shadow moved. A face, pale, hollow, watching. Just then, headlights appeared in the distance. A car approached, and Emily and James frantically waved for help. The driver pulled over, confused. "Are you the Airbnb guests?" he asked. "I own this place. I stopped renting it out months ago." Emily and James stared at him in horror. "But someone's been living in there." The police arrived and searched the house, but they found no one. The hiding space was still filled with the eerie belongings, but the notebook had one new entry: "I'm still here." Shaking, Emily and James left town that night. When they checked the Airbnb listing later, the cabin had been removed. The owner filed a police report, but no trace of the hidden tenant was ever found.